All right. Well, welcome. Episode 1 of take 3 of us doing a podcast. Uh, I'm Elliot.
I'm Tom.
Cool. If you're joining us on video, you can see who we are. If you're on audio, look at the video. I don't know. This is. Now I'm going to forget the acronym, but it's a really good one, so bear with me. It's We Should Absolutely.
We absolutely should.
Damn it. See, I knew it screwed up. We absolutely should start a podcast. And the acronym is What's up? Because, we're real clever like that. So
That took us at least 4 days to think of.
it did. We went through some pretty dumb names as well, including, what was it? Burrito Show? Or something? Tech
that was just a
Burrito.
random name generator.
Yeah, I did go through a random name generator, I'll admit. So anyway, so if you're here, thanks for checking us out. General theme of the show, Tom and I will talk about tech, what we found this week. There'll be some vague themes based on what we're interested in. Fairly lighthearted. Who knows what it'll look like in 400 episodes' time. Yeah. Anything to add?
What was your inspiration for starting it, Elliot?
Well, I'm on a bit of a content production binge at the moment. Trying to do a lot of writing. I kind of always wanted to do a podcast. I don't know why. I just think it's cool and something that's fun. And here we are. What about you?
For me, I always feel that you and I have really good conversations, and I think that we always talk about things that other people might not be across. And I notice that when I take those things to other groups of people, they always think that's pretty interesting. So, like everyone, it's probably a little bit of ego thinking that we're real smart and people want to hear what we say. In reality, we suck. But no, that's my main reason is, and also like really, we just do this every day, so we might as well just record it.
Exactly. So, bit of context. I'm in Australia. Tom's over in the UK. We're co-founders of a company called Maxwell Plus. It's as close as we have to a sponsor right now. So we work together. We're AI in healthcare, so you'll probably see that theme come through a little bit. And yeah, I mean, we totally blew past it, but we said we'd start this episode with what are you drinking, Tom? What have you got?
Yeah, well, actually, I think our sponsor is the NHS England, which is the cup that I'm drinking out of.
There's a bold call to call them our
Please,
sponsor.
yeah. Please don't chase me down, Boris. No, so today I'm kicking off the day with a nice little Zarroca blend, which is grown by Gilberto Basilio in where was it? It doesn't say where it was grown. Oh, in Brazil. So when Packed Coffee starts sponsoring us, this is so it's delightful. Made a little brew this morning, just a little French press though.
Very nice. Very nice.
What are you cracking open? Different time of day for you?
Yes, it's the tail end of my day. I have a Suntory double lemon, and I bought them because they have low calories, and I like lemon. It's not that exciting. I don't know where it was made, other than maybe Japan, but probably not.
Is it a daddy soft drink or a child soft drink?
Oh, it's got vodka in it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, it's Friday afternoon.
You're opening the show with essentially vodka Smirnoff.
Yeah. You know, there was me when I was like 18, definitely not any younger than that. And then I went through a phase of, no, you have to drink sophisticated drinks. You're a man. And then eventually you realize you just drink the drinks that taste good, and you're back to the soft drink.
Yeah, except Elliot, we made one rule is that we wouldn't be ashamed to show our mothers this show, in terms of level of content. And your mum definitely knew you drank before 18, so don't lie to her.
Yeah, but there may be a statute of limitations on that. I don't know what it is. So, police, I definitely didn't. Everyone else, I probably did. Anyway, enough of this nonsense. Let's get into a couple of the things we've pulled up. So Tom and I have each pulled up an article that we found interesting, and let's talk about them. So given that you've taken better notes than me, you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. I got to have a dry run with this with my partner yesterday because she was asking about it. But so this week I came across something called the Canon model. and it was made by this, and I'm probably going to butcher the name because I didn't put it in my notes, but I think it was Nitoki Kano. Anyway, he was a Japanese professor that came up with this model for how to think about product features. So obviously relevant from a tech point of view for product development. But what's super interesting to me about this is that it was made in the 80s, so it's now like 40 years old, and it's still very relevant. And to me, it's got the marker of a really good model/framework in that, like, as soon as you hear it, you're like, oh, that makes complete sense. Yeah, of course, that makes complete sense. It's very intuitive when you hear about it, but there's an incredible amount of thought that's gone into it. So I think it's really cool. It is all about how features are not made equal. And once again, that's very intuitive, being like, oh, yeah, of course, features are not made equal. And with this model, Professor Kano came up with 5 different categories for qualities and for features. Um, I'm actually going to switch the language around this a little bit because a lot of it is direct translation from Japanese, and I love the direct translations. They're kind of like a little bit quirky, but they're great, and I think it makes them a bit more memorable. And so features are actually called qualities. So the qualities of a product, which I think is a nice word. Feature sounds a little bit like tacky to me, but quality sounds inherent, so I like that. Anyway, so there's 5 different qualities or features, and those are must-be's, one-dimensionals, attractives, indifference, and reverses. So you can probably guess a few of those.
I reckon I can't guess any of those.
Mm.
Like, I could have a red hot go, but let's start with the beginning. What's a must be?
So a must-be is table stakes. So what to consider with this feature is without it, people will hate your product and never like your product. But with it, it won't cause them any benefit or fulfillment. It's just you need this. Think like car and wheels, essentially.
Okay.
Basically, they're so ubiquitous that people don't even think about them, and you'll never put them on your advertising. An example someone gave that when I was reading was like a hotel providing a clean room for you.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
So,
I mean, that makes sense.
yeah, so they're must-haves rather than must-be's. This would probably be the the translation that we'd more understand. But I like must-be's. Next one is one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. What's a one
And so
dimensional?
these are the things that you probably see on the pamphlet for an advertising. So these are the features that will lead to people when you invest in them. People will gain pleasure from them, and they're kind of like a linear investment. Think of it as like storage on your phone, and I'll probably keep coming back to the phone as an example throughout this. So forget if I so yeah, storage on your phone. The more you invest in it, the more happier a customer will be. So if you double the storage, you can expect their happiness with the product to increase a little bit as well. So pretty predictable. They're kind of expected, and people will usually purchase off them. So it could also be battery life and things like that. So
And do these things specifically have to be like infinitely linear? Because I imagine like if your phone had 8,000 terabytes and then the next phone had 8,001,
yeah,
it'd probably not be as valuable as the first terabyte, you know?
correct. Yeah. Look, I don't think they're exactly a straight line, but I'll jump into like the curve of these lines because yes, he went and graphed them and what they would look like. And I'll jump into that in a bit at the end. But yeah, like there's an element of linearity to them, but obviously I think it's not forever linear.
Okay.
The next one is attractive. I've also heard this one called satisfiers, but these are the ones that if they didn't exist, people wouldn't care about it. They wouldn't not buy your product because it didn't exist. But when it does exist, it blows their mind. So I think a really good example with that is Face ID with your phone.
For sure.
So people never bought the new iPhones because of Face ID. Or actually, probably the better innovation example is the thumb unlock, right?
Yeah.
Which was the precursor to the Face ID, where it wasn't a purchasing point, but as soon as you have it, you're like, oh my! As soon as you have to type in a number again on a phone, you're like, oh my god, I can't live without this.
Yeah, interesting. It's also interesting to think about how like those things shift into table stakes over time.
Exactly. And did you read this article? That's cheating.
No, I didn't. I
No, that's
genuinely
exactly like one of the points is over time, these attractives or these satisfiers, they become table stakes over time. So now, for example, you like Apple would never release an iPhone without Face ID.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. I mean, to give a very real example of this, it kind of feels like when Apple took the headphone jack away.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay. So that's satisfiers. Was that the
Yeah,
translation?
attractive in the pure Kanoisms.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
Next one's indifference.
Indifference.
Yeah.
Let me take a guess of what an indifferent would be. I mean, it sounds like stuff that you might pile in that really doesn't matter, but that seems odd. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly it. It's features that you invest in, and no one gives a crap about whether they're in or they're out.
Yeah, right. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, like I get that in theory. Well, coming back to the phone analogy, like, do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I was thinking with this as well, and like, I think one of the ones would probably be, and I think as well, it's also important to bring a like type of customer to a lens as well. But like, I think the Siri shortcuts. I think it's an indifferent for a lot of people. It's not an indifferent for everyone, but the shortcuts of functionality.
That brings up an interesting point in that I guess under like user personas or jobs to be done and things like I guess the same feature could be an indifferent for one person and a key feature for another or table stakes for a third.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is like I think actually this is what leads to market like fragmentation a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, indifference are things like if you have them in there, people don't care, and if you don't have them in there, they don't care.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
All right. I mean,
Probably a better example is like, like for me is that dual air conditioning on a car where you can like heat one side up and cool down the other, even though that makes zero sense to me.
I think to me that goes beyond indifferent. I wish they would actively remove that.
Oh.
It's so nonsense.
And Elliot, we've just found your reverse.
Yeah, good.
So the final one is reverse. Can you have a guess at that?
Things that make people turn away. I would guess, but
but with the caveat of when it's invested in by the company, i.e., they put effort into it, it turns people off more. The more they put into it, the more it turns people off.
Yeah, and I think that fits with the dual aircon. Is that like it's there? I don't really care what they do with it, but if people spent more money trying to somehow split my car down the middle to cool one side and heat the other, I would be actively annoyed.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, exactly. So a good example of this is like additional things that create complexity in an item that just people are like, oh no, I just want the real simple one, the real simple version of this. Like, take out the complexity for me.
Yeah.
And or another example is over featuring resulting in a higher cost. It's like, so I think keeping our phone example, the iPhone, is it SE? The SE is a good example of like removing the over featuring where some people are like, I just want a smartphone that can download the latest apps. I don't care about the cameras. I want something a bit less complex.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
So those are our 5. Once again, those are must-be's, which are our table stakes. Our one-dimensionals, which are, I like to think of them as like what's on the advertising pamphlet. So they're the features on the advertising pamphlet. We've got the attractives, which you generally wouldn't advertise, but they're the things that people will tell their friends about. And then we got the indifference, which no one cares about, full stop. And then we've got the reverses.
Okay.
So, what you got?
Yeah. I mean, what do we do with this?
So the way to think about, so what you want to be doing with this, like the actual like application of this is, if you were working in the product world, is to think about all of the features and or qualities of your product and classify them.
Okay.
And you can probably take a guess of, there's some that you don't want to spend any time on as a company, and there's some you want to spend just enough time on, and there's some you want to invest in.
Hmm. That's an interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of categorizing things and giving things names as a way to change the way you think
Yeah.
about them.
And so when you categorize like this, you can see like, yeah, no, not all features are created equal, and this is the beauty of it, where you're like, oh yeah, that sounds real obvious, but like until you think about it and like write it down, it's something you
Yeah.
don't come
Yeah,
across every
definitely.
day.
I mean, it makes me think of. Do you remember? Probably was like 5 years ago now. There was that trend where all of the milk companies. I don't know if this was an international thing or just here in Australia. All of the milk companies differentiate. Well, advertised that they were permeate free. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was the weirdest thing. So, for context, for people who don't know what that was, basically permeate is just some byproduct of the milk pasteurization process, and they use it to make sure that the amount of protein and stuff in your milk is equal throughout the year, which is a sensible thing to do because cows produce different amounts of milk at different times of the year, and you want to make sure that milk is milk. I just want milk that tastes like real milk. But one company clued on to this idea that, like, if they said permeate free, that sounds like a cool feature for their milk.
Right.
The same as
Riding the
like
organic trend.
GMO, all of that sort of stuff. And then every single company suddenly shifted from nothing to then advertising we are permeate free milk. And then weirdly, like just 1 week, the whole milk industry came to its senses and just stopped talking about permeate. It was a very weird time.
Yeah. I wonder whether that one company that started it actually saw an uptick in sales, or like everyone just started advertising because everyone else was advertising. There was this arms race of permeate advertising.
Yeah. It's interesting how, even under that model, like the things that, I don't know, to a certain extent, like the stuff that customers think will be the key feature is a mix of what is actually the key feature and what is advertised as the key feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So the next thing that I think the next really incredible thing about this is like imagining this, because there's two important things to consider about this in this situation. Is one is like how much satisfaction will it give your customer, but also like how hard is it going to be for you to build this as a company. So, for example, if you tried to put a Face ID on a Nokia 3310 20 years ago, that would have probably been an overkill in investment for you as an organization. And so there's this kind of trade-off of, obviously there's things in here that you just want to outright avoid, right? Like reverses and indifference, you don't want to spend any company resources on. And in fact, you should probably spend company resources removing them from your product if that's the situation. But then you have this idea of like, well, how much should we, are you actually over investing in the table stakes, because once you've got them, no one cares about them, and like, would you be better off putting that investment into one-dimensionals, or even into finding what those attractives or satisfiers are? But they basically, Kano made this really cool graph. Excuse me while I get a different colored pen. Elliot's going to entertain you with elevator music while I stand up for 2 seconds.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, this whole thing gives me vibes of this book. Let me have a look what it is on my shelf so we can both look away at the same time. That's really smart. Monetizing innovation, which is talking about like how products end up in all these different states of like being over engineered and impossible to sell and all this other stuff. So I think
Yeah.
it's a good model. And you know what intrigues me a lot about this is how this works in a competitive environment. In that, like, let's say there's the Androids and the iPhones to vastly simplify the phone market. If both Android and iPhone introduce thumbprint readers in the same year, it's now table stakes. But if one announces it a year faster than its competitor, it's now a draw card.
It's a
I think,
competitive advantage. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really interesting in how you play your competition and how your features are not just dependent on what your users want, but what the whole market is doing in the space. And for those on video, Tom is coughing. He doesn't have
Yeah.
COVID.
I've done like a million rats tests. I've had COVID a few times, but anyway. For those that aren't Australian, RATS is what we call our rapid antigen tests from Australia. Good name. So yeah, when you consider these two dimensions of investment versus customer satisfaction, it brings up well, then you start to get to categorize things as well and prioritize from that. And Canon came up with this really like elegant graph to describe all these qualities and how the investment trade-off and customer satisfaction happens. And I'm going to draw them. We'll put a link in the show notes for those just on audio, but I'm gonna draw them fairly. It's benefiting those on video. But if we take our must be's, so originally, like if we remember the must be definition, which is if you've got zero, if you don't have them, it's huge, it's very bad, low customer satisfaction to the point that they won't use your product. But if you do have them, it's basically not an improve. It's a neutral on customer satisfaction. So what ends up happening is if you graph it, and I'll show you that little graph in a little second, you end up with this asymptotic line if you consider this asymptotic line, which is that little blue line there. On the x-axis, we have investment. So the more you invest in it, and on the y-axis, we have engagement. So a positive on the not engagement, satisfaction. Positive on the satisfaction means happy customer. Negative means sad customer. So the more that as you invest in this, you're just approaching neutral customer satisfaction. So the more and more you invest, you're not getting any returns in it. So it's this kind of, but as soon as you don't invest in it, which is a negative on the x-axis, it just drops away suddenly. So it's kind of pretty cool representation.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's your ticket to play. And I think, again, coming back to this idea of like competitive markets, that point or that group of features, which is table stakes, changes over time. So you have to be like, you can't just build, the Nokia 3310, which was a great phone, by the way. And like, it might meet table stakes the day it's released, but 2 decades later from where we probably are now, that wouldn't make table stakes.
Absolutely. And so the mirror image of this, which is the must be's, is the attractive, so the satisfies, the thing people will tell people about. And what the definition of that is no investment means nothing, neutral to your customer satisfaction, because they don't know they should have it. So if you don't invest in it, you're essentially neutral on the customer satisfaction. But as soon as you do, you're going to start to see almost a disproportionate in customer satisfaction. So you see an almost mirror image asymptotic line. So if you draw it on the graph, it like looks above it there. So it's that little top one there. So it just kind of mirrors it. And then what happens over time, and I think this is one of the reasons that explains like the sayings of like, as soon as you drive the car out the door, it's worth less. As soon as you buy the iPhone, it's out of date, kind of thing. Because over time, as we've already said, those attractives become must-be's. So they kind of like shift down to the must-be line over time. Yeah. So those are kind of the two cooler ones from the considering investment versus satisfaction. The indifference, if you draw, and I'll just draw the graph, but I'll go through it a bit quicker. The one-dimensionals, which are like the phone storage, the things like how good your camera is. The idea is that it's just a linear line across it. So up the middle. Comstar, where it just goes, the more you invest in it, the more satisfied your customer is going to be. As we discussed, it's not perfectly linear, but that's the way to think about it from an engineering point of view.
Yeah.
The reverses are the other way. They're linear, but they're a negative linear line. So the less you invest in it, the more satisfaction. The more you invest in it, the less satisfaction. So it kind of crosses down over it in the opposite way, like that. And then the indifference, Elliot. Any guess what that's gonna look like on this graph?
Just a flat line across zero, probably.
Yep, exactly.
Would be my guess. Reminding everybody that X is investment, Y is customer engagement. Still a massive waste of money, but yeah.
So those are the 5 qualities, and now there's a bunch of different. I came across a couple of resources as well, like for those that are interested in looking at this as well, like of how to evaluate where things are in it, and like Professor Kano gave some questions on how to do it, like and asked you to ask about functioning, but also the dysfunctioning of a product. So so you consider it with the functioning feature, and you could consider it without the functioning feature or a dysfunctioning feature. And depending on responses, you can categorize them into must-be's, one-dimensionals, attractors, reverses, and things like that. So, and there's a bunch of different surveys as well. There's someone who's written tried 5 different ways to survey this and found their best. So it's pretty cool. So
that is cool. Do you think this is something you can know in advance? Like if you're planning your new features, it seems to me, especially again, I know I keep coming back here, but coming back to this competitive environment, like you almost can't know perfectly how people are going to respond to certain things. So how do you think about testing that and categorizing that in features that don't exist yet?
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking about this as well, and the person I was listening to, I've forgotten her name, but she was pretty switched on around this area. She was saying that like the applications for this are much better in a defined product category and like product problem already, and it's also very good retrospectively. Whereas blue sky thinking for product of like if you're like I want to make a new coffee cup, it can be like a little bit bad because you need people to be able to reference from something that they know and they use. So it's most valuable when they can use something. So for example, you wouldn't be able to discover Face ID unlock from a survey, right? The old incorrectly attributed Henry Ford quote of ask people what they want and they would have asked for a faster horse instead of a car kind of situation.
Who did say that?
They don't know who said it, but it wasn't Henry Ford apparently. Great quote though.
He can have it. He's done pretty well.
Yeah, he's done. No, he's had enough. He's got enough. He doesn't get it. Give it to someone else. Give it to his younger brother or something.
Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I mean, to put this in our lens,
Can you imagine that? Just be like, yeah, as Julius Caesar said.
Yeah, I mean, and at the time it was probably true. People did want faster horses. Yeah, so I mean, coming back to this, we're startup founders. We're very involved in product. We have to decide what to build. We have limited funds, limited capacity, limited staff. If there's other founders out there listening to this, like how does the Canon model apply to startup founders or head of product in a early stage venture?
Yeah, to me, I think it's the like double click on feedback to engage with your new users. So like, there's a couple of different ways to like get the high level feedback. You can use the NPS or you can use the superhuman metric, which we might talk about another time, which basically asks the question of how sad would you be if this disappeared? And that's kind of the overall. I think the Kano model is a really good way to consider certain aspects of your product and to classify them. Because you might be, and I think what could be interesting as well is things that you consider one-dimensionals, right? Things that you consider attractive features that you would give to your users that the more you invest in, the happier they'd be. might not actually be. People might be indifferent about them. I think that's the and I don't think you need these. I don't think you need the Kano model for the attractives, which are the customer engagements. I think you know when you nail a customer engagement, right? Like people will start talking about it. Um, I think you probably, if you've already got a product in market, you've probably got a pretty good idea of like what the must-haves are. There's probably a little bit you can be doing around like make sure you're not over investing in them and things like that. But I think really where the value comes for this is like discerning the indifference versus the one dimensionals. And then also as well making sure you're not accidentally creating a reverse, which is the one where more of it makes people pissed off.
Yeah. I guess classic startup advice of like MVPs and do things that don't scale is like find answers to these questions before you overinvest.
Yeah. And what I wonder as well is like, if you wanted to consider the perfect product, right? Would it all be just must be's? Would all the features be must be's and only attractives? Like, would there be any one dimensionals?
Yeah. I feel like in the context of a startup where you really you are under resourced, even if you've raised a bunch of money and have lots of staff members and maybe not a ton of revenue, like if you're competing with an incumbent, they probably have more resources to invest in the one dimensionals, and if they're an established one dimensional, you're probably not going to win. I feel like the way to win is like invent new must-haves.
Yeah.
And make it too hard for your competitors to build those in a hurry and either be acquired or just capture their market from underneath them.
And do you mean by creating more must-haves, you mean creating attractives that will eventually become must-haves over time?
Yeah.
No, and I think that is the the secret sauce in the whole like product-led growth, right? Which is like everyone wants the product to speak for itself, so people refer because it gives you a marketing advantage, right? And like these attractives are how you create that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you certainly have an easier time marketing a product when you're saying we have this no one else does versus we have 2% more storage than our competitors.
Yeah. And I think it also helps as well from a like positioning point of view, as well as like, oh no, we don't compete with them because we do this because of this feature.
Yeah. We're all on a category of one kind of thing.
Yeah. I also wonder as well about so I think it's really valuable in the like what do you consider a must be that actually isn't a must be? So like probably a debate that we've had a fair bit is whether we should have a patient application or not, like an app for our patient rather than just a portal where people could access. I think that would be a really good way to interrogate that for us, whether that's a must be or it's a one dimensional or like actually it's an attractive, like actually having an app is valuable. And I think it probably helps you quantify and classify whether things are actually a competitive advantage for you, i.e. an attractive. So for example, if like your value proposition was ease of use or something like that, right? Compared to the current incumbent, it's pretty hard to quantify. It's pretty hard to be sure that that actually is an advantage.
Yeah.
And I feel like this Canon model could help. And I think as well, what it might actually force you to do is go to a level of detail. So I think if I think about Superhuman, which is basically an email client that you can use, there everyone says ease of use, but when you like go even further, it's actually the speed that things people can do with. So when you get ease of use in the customer's head, speed translates to it's easy to use, but actually what they really mean is like everything's super fast, and I got a bunch of shortcuts to make everything super fast.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd even go further and say that like it's a feeling, because realistically, I mean, their goal is like, I don't know if it's 10 or 100 milliseconds per action, but it comes a point where you can't talk about ROI on your email in hundredths of a second. But when everything feels fast, there's this general user experience of like, this is slick. You know, I mean, Tom and I, we work in healthcare. We we have a fair share of non-slick software, and
Such as fax machines.
yeah. We'll have an episode 421 will be about fax machines.
And 419 will just be our dogs staring at each other.
Yes. I mean, you may have seen my dog running around in the background, and I think Tom's dog is on a walk, but they will likely be our first guests in the show. No, that's an interesting one. I mean, how'd you come across this? Because I'd never heard of Canon before.
Have you heard of the book Demand Side Sales?
I have. I think I have demand side sales. What's the cover look like? Yeah, I have that
Big old yellow one.
audio book, and I will admit I downloaded it and have not started listening to it.
Yeah, so it was in the book. Yeah, it was I think in chapter 2 or something, and they just kind of like offhandedly mentioned it for it, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I never heard it, and I looked into it, and yeah, the Kano model, and then it's just it's not, I've been playing in the startup world for 4 years now, and I've never come across it except in this book. When I searched for it, there was stuff on it, but there wasn't as much stuff as I imagined. It was a little less, and the fact that you hadn't heard about it either as well, like the both of us missed it, means I think it's like semi-buried.
Underdog.
Yeah. Anyway, if you're listening to this Kano model, you heard it here first.
You did. Yeah,
after
absolutely
all 40 years of other people talking about it.
Yeah, I mean,
and that just blows my mind. It's 40 years old, like, and there it is, like explaining stuff. It's a really cool framework, I think.
Yeah. No, very nice. Very nice. And as we've said a few times, links to stuff that we remember to put in the show notes will be in the show notes, whether that's on the audio version or the video version. If we forgot something, you can probably Google it. Demand side sales is a pretty easy book to Google. We'll get better at this with practice, I promise. And I mean, on the minuscule chance that somebody's watching this and wants to send us in a question or something else, you can probably hit us both up on Twitter. I'm Elliot_C_Smith, and Tom is Tom_K_White. Both those links will be in the show notes. Send us a message. It'll give us more stuff to talk about.
Are we ending the show? That felt like the end of the show.
No, that wasn't it was meant to be a transition, not the end. As you can see, we're well practiced in podcasting.
I'm ready to follow you on Twitter now, though. I don't want to hear anymore until next week.
Well, too bad. All right, cool. All right, well,
what did you come across this week?
I found a few things this week as relate to AI. We'll talk about one today. I'm going to steal your idea of doing a weekly wrap up of interesting links and a small bit of commentary as a way to produce more content. So elliotsmith.com, subscribe to my newsletter. The rest of it will be there. But the one I thought would be interesting to talk about is this article from NPR. It came out on the 27th of March, which was, the title is That Smiling LinkedIn Profile Face Might Be a Computer-Generated Fake. And the crux of the article is a journalist at NPR, Shannon Bond. She was made aware of some fake LinkedIn profiles. And this isn't fake LinkedIn profiles as in no display picture posting you've won 6,000 Bitcoin, click here straight away. This was profiles created somewhat professionally to look like real human beings with fabricated work histories, deepfake AI, or, for those more in the know, GAN generated profile pictures for the purpose, from what I can tell, of doing content promotion. And Yeah.
Quick nomenclature check. Is it technically a deep fake if it's just a complete fake?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the line is on that. But these are completely fabricated humans. So
Yeah, they're the like this person doesn't exist picture, right?
yeah. So trained on a big database of people and then used to generate fake faces. And these at first glance, and especially at the minuscule size that they appear on LinkedIn in most posts and things, they'd pass for a human. Definitely. We are good at generating human like faces now. But the example that they used in the article, they had a education history, they had 367 followers, and they apparently work at they're a growth specialist at Ring Central, and there are agencies putting these out. And
Central.
I don't. What's that?
Ring Central. What's that?
I think it's. I don't know, to be honest. I think it might be a Twilio competitor, so like an online sort of help desk call routing type product, but I don't know. But yeah, there's agencies.
You've never heard of them because they've never grown that much because all their growth
Yeah,
specialists
I
are fake.
mean, if that's just anything about this technique, then there you go. But yeah, I mean, there's firms out there making profiles to promote businesses and drum up employee count, drum up engagement, drum up conversation.
So it's to promote your own business by making your business look bigger. It's not like you create a fake account and get them to cross post material.
From what I can tell, it's a mix of both. In that, like, you might say that they work for Maxwell Plus, and they'll post a whole bunch of prostate cancer AI related content, but they're not real.
Because
And
I get the like cross promotion of like content stuff if you wanted to like get things out there a bit more. You get 5 people with 500 separate followers and promote the same thing on all of them.
I mean, buying fake followers has been around for a long time. Like you can buy a bunch of Instagram followers or YouTube subscribers for not an expensive cost. But what I found so interesting about
Want to
this,
be bought? Send us a message at buy my like at whatsuppodcast.com.
what I found so interesting about this is like the effort that they're going to appear real, and how we're sort of crossing this threshold of possible real people. And like you think about, not so much LinkedIn, it's been acquired, but let's say Twitter in the early days or LinkedIn in the early days, like those companies live and breathe on the number of users. And if these are like indistinguishable real users, and you can create 10 million of them an hour, you can pose a pretty convincing, like, we have a lot of active users on our platform type metric. And according to this article, in the first half of 2021, LinkedIn had to remove 15 million fake accounts. That's insane. Do you reckon? 15 million fake accounts.
Yeah, if your compensation was tied to like account numbers at LinkedIn, you'd be pretty incentivized to just keep those numbers, keep that going. Imagine if general intelligence was actually created in the first like just in a social network, and it was just a real boring version of general intelligence where
all it knew how to do was post LinkedIn stories that are like, I was driving to work today and I saw a dog on the side of the road and I stopped to give it a bone. And then I went into my interview and it turns out the dog was a CEO. Blessed. Hashtag look out for others. Hashtag
I'm humbled to announce that.
I'm humbled to announce that I am still a billionaire. Hashtag Warren Buffett. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, you look at LinkedIn sometimes, you do wonder if it's all just robots. But
it's the most robot side of humans.
Yeah, it's a very weird application of artificial intelligence. But I mean,
Have you seen that joke version of someone getting their driver's license and like the LinkedIn version post of it?
No.
Oh, it's so funny. It's like I'm thrilled to announce I've been accepted into an elite class of the elite class, like the elite 2021 class of like grade A drivers or so. It's
Oh man,
so,
LinkedIn is such a vibe. It's so weird, I reckon. Yeah, good. But yeah, I found it fascinating. You know, I've been doing a lot of writing and research recently on uh, AI and how it's affecting us. And I think this deepfake thing and just fully synthetic content is such a weird and fascinating world that we're coming into.
where do you think like I because what always interests me is like I never think like everyone's predicting that there'll be porn videos of every single one of us out there soon with deepfake the way it's heading, but I never really believe what we predict is going to happen. But I do believe that like it will be a thing in the future. So like deepfakes will be a thing, but I just don't know how they're going to look. And this, I love hearing new use cases for things like this, like deepfake LinkedIn for content promotion and stuff like that. It's like sooner we're going to have to like, the creation of fake news. We're going to have to start thinking about that as well with our like professional network being like, whoop, hang on. Fake network alert, fake connection alert.
Well, yeah, and how do you like number one, how do you verify this? And like I don't know. What's it going to look like in the future if like suddenly 10% of your LinkedIn connections are not real? And that comes out. And I think social media to me is a very interesting one, especially around like TikTok. TikTok is like insanely addictive, right?
Mm.
And there must be more content going up on TikTok every day than anybody could watch in a lifetime. Which makes you think like how far away are they from creating fully synthetic stuff?
As
Yeah,
in,
and they're just a feed of
just
just
auto-generated content because
yeah,
they're the biggest database on like what is addictive content in the world.
yeah, absolutely. Like their algorithm is insane. And then what happens if you just what if you made an AI program to basically spit out 40-second videos that ranked highly on TikTok?
Of people just jumping up and down in their clothes changing.
Yeah, just like insane stuff. I don't know. There is like this whole there's like TikTok or YouTube Shorts or whatever the Instagram one is, Reels maybe. Like I don't know. Pick your less than 1 minute video provider. It doesn't bother me. But like there is some very repetitive, very weird content on there that like I feel like is a good candidate for just generating with AI.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if there's money to be made on views and ads and all that sort of stuff, like it'll happen for sure.
But yeah, do you think that AI is like, like it will just all head towards it'll like regress to the mean of like what is the most attractive content for human beings, and it'll just be that on repeat, and then people will get bored? Like, can AI create new
Yeah.
fads for us?
Yeah.
Or like,
I mean,
if you let the AI program take over TikTok, would it just be people clicking and their background changes in a week?
yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean there's a couple of things in this article that talk to that, in that like if you spend 5 minutes reviewing a bunch of these AI generated profile pictures, you can work out which ones are fake because there's characteristic signs that they're fake. Like their eyes and their nose are pretty much like always centered, always very well aligned. The background's always blurry. The hair always looks a bit funny. But I think you're right in that, and even coming back to this model that we were discussing before, like if suddenly these AI content generators were making the same weird video a million times, people would get bored and the expectation would shift. So I do think that's where the complexity lies. And like this AI can probably thrive when it's like 2% of the content, but it costs literally $0 to produce. But if it was all AI, I think people would very quickly get bored for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd
And
hope so.
do Do you think it would be TikTok that makes this, or like individual creators? Like TikTok doesn't have a content problem, right? Like,
Yeah. I think it'll start with individual creators. To take a much simpler medium like Twitter, let's just assume you can't do anything on Twitter except post like 280 characters and forget Twitter threads and photos and all that sort of stuff. Like, I don't think there's much in. I think the risk of Twitter doing it would be that if it got found out, like, people would get disheartened, users would leave, everything else. If users do it and Twitter somewhat turns a blind eye to it, and it boosts engagement, it boosts user numbers, it boosts whatever else, they're not really incentivized to shut it down until somebody calls them out. So I think it'll start with the user. I'm sure it's already there.
I feel like it'd just turn into Facebook, where like no one I know still uses Facebook except my mum, but like apparently there's still billions of users out there that still use Facebook.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it'll be interesting. I don't know, it's such a weird thing to think. Also, how would you block it? But then, where it comes back to in my mind is like, would this happen if it cost $100 a year to be on LinkedIn? Almost certainly not.
No.
Because like LinkedIn is mainly ad supported. I know you can have a paid account and all that sort of stuff. Well, let's use Twitter as a better example. Like, they have that subscription, which I have, but like most of Twitter's revenue comes from ads. And that means being a user and engaging and posting content is free, which means there's no financial hurdle to make 10,000 AI controlled accounts. But if it costs you $100 a year to be on Twitter, like, it seems a little too much to pay for a fake AI profile, unless it could make $110.
yeah.
So yeah, I know.
So what's the future of social media hold then? Like, one question I have is like, if you're an investor, you can't use like daily active users as a metric really anymore. Like, you can, but like,
How much of it is fake? Like how much of Facebook is fake?
and then the other question as well is like, are we just going to splinter off into like more little groups in different platforms because
We want to be seeing the content that we want to be seeing, and we want to explore in a way we want to explore, and
the other way is just cooked by bots?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts of it to me, in that we want to be able to verify real people, I think, to make this problem go away. Like, if you're taking life advice, social media is pretty inane, but if it was financial advice or something else, health advice, you'd want to know it's a real person.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like, I'm a big believer that like privacy and anonymity on the internet is an important thing.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have to hold up a picture of your license in today's newspaper to join Twitter, because there's a lot of people for which like the fact that they don't have to reveal who they are
Yeah.
is very important to them. So I don't know. I don't know how we're going to solve it.
Should we mention the C word so we can trend higher on Twitter and podcast platforms?
The old crypto word, is that what you're
Yeah,
heading
yeah.
towards?
Just where
Yeah.
is like, because there's like the huge amount of like pseudo anonymous in it, right? Where like it is an entity, and you can be sure that entity is that entity, but you don't know who's behind that entity, right?
Yeah, and I think it comes back to a similar model to like paying a subscription to Twitter to be on the platform, is that like you're staking some reputation, in this case your wealth, on your membership to the site, and
Yeah.
you're willing to put that on the line. And if you set that threshold high enough, you want to set it such that for these AI companies, it's not profitable to be doing this.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things where like, yeah, even just putting $1 in to create an account would would solve 80% of this problem, I reckon.
Yeah. And yeah, 1 cent is infinitely more expensive than free. You know? And it's interesting. You could even, like, I don't know, like if you had to put $100 on the line to have a Twitter account, and anytime you wanted, you could shut down your account and get that $100 back.
Yeah.
But if you turn out to be fake or spam or crap, it's gone.
If you abuse if you're Trump, you don't get your $100 back because you abuse the terms and conditions of the.
Yeah. But I mean, I remember
Do you reckon
reading.
Trump's made another account, like just a secret one, so he can still get on there and watch things?
Well, yeah, I mean, probably. Like, why wouldn't you? The cost is literally nothing. Maybe he is using an AI generated face.
Maybe he is this growth specialist from Braintree.
Ring Central.
Ring Central.
But I guess on the flip side, like, it reminds me of the story from Freakonomics, I think the first book, where there was the daycare center that was sick of parents picking up their kids late, and then they put a fee on picking up your kids late, and then people just accepted that as the cost, and they were like, okay, cool, that's a cost I'm willing to pay, and it had the opposite effect of what they intended.
Yeah.
So I guess in some ways it may just push the market to find AI that can generate $110 of value on the platform because it's worth the risk, and that might be worse overall.
And then there's hyperinflation in the Twitter like entry fee.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're right. Like it'll just solve it for a problem, and then someone will crack it and be able to create a AI that will like.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that is the path to artificial general intelligence. Is not one AI continuing to train itself to be better and better and better. It's just a whole bunch of us fighting it until it evolves and adapts and learns to spam us better than we can spam ourselves.
No, and like this is what I like. I reckon general intelligence isn't going to be something real lame. Like, yeah, it's a Twitter bot that was there to just requote funny cat memes.
Who knows how to
like-
post memes?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I've got a couple of posts on AGI
Like the
and
for example.
yeah, exactly. The infinite paper clips. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was really interesting. I think it's going to become more popular. I mean, there was a deep fake video of the Ukrainian prime minister.
Zelensky.
Yeah, Zelensky, like talking about stuff, and it turned out to be totally fake. And I think, misinformation, deliberate misinformation. You know, if you're trying to prop up the number of employees that your new startup has by like 2% on LinkedIn, it's fairly harmless. But
No. Yeah, I think there'll be a $1 billion security business around like you can provide verification to certain groups of people that this is true content from that organization and stuff like that. Like, like you're watching a video, you're like, hang on, is this actually from Zelensky? And then,
yeah, definitely. And, it may become a case of, let's say it's on YouTube. YouTube has to develop AI to spot fakes. And it's just this constant back and forth, much like spam email. The spammers work out how to bypass the email. And then the email filters get better. And for those of you that were only joining us for audio, you missed a nice beverage round 2 delivery for Tom there.
everyone meet Lisa.
Good. Well, mate, we're coming up to an hour. I think that's a good amount of time for our first one. We dove
That was
into.
easier than I imagined. You're easy to talk to.
Who would have thought, mate? We should be in business together. I mean, let's wrap this out with something interesting. What is that thing stuck to your wall?
Oh, yeah. So, I was actually going to say we should do a little background exploration at some point of like, except yours is nice, crispy, and blurry. So it is a bike holder. So I don't know whether you can hear me, but the frame of the bike goes in there, like
this is going to make a lot of sense for our audio only folks, but
it's a smart idea. I was gonna I don't keep my bike up here. I was gonna keep it up there, but then it just took up too much room. And if I take it off, it's just this weird bolt holes and looks gross in it. So I don't know. I'm thinking about putting a plant in it, growing down from it or something. But
yeah,
other than
that
that,
could be a good one.
Other than that, if I look like that, it looks like I got a silly hat on.
Yeah, nice.
Once again, you got to watch on video apparently.
Yeah, check us out on video. I got to work out how to extract the audio, so that'll be maybe we'll just be video.
yeah.
Anyway,
And we should just share this on TikTok. You and I don't have any experience with TikTok, from a
yeah, I mean, we could turn this into 61-minute clips. I'll try to pull out a few good ones and we can share them around. But look, if you're watching this and you sat through 1 hour of episode 1 of what is hopefully our absolute worst, because it only goes up every episode that we do, thanks for sticking around. I'm Elliot.
I'm Tom, and this was We Absolutely Should Start a Podcast.
All right. Until next time, peace.